morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to talk because Twilight Masquerade is coming out later this week. And we need to talk about the best new decks that are coming in the set. I told you the best cards in the set. I'll link that video in the description, make it nice and easy to find. But we need to talk about which decks are going to be making waves when this is legal for play in a couple of weeks. Although obviously, with NAIC being the first tournament where it's legal, I'm willing to bet most of you are probably going to start testing before it's actually legal, as you kind of probably need to. So with that borne in mind, there is a clear answer for best new deck from the set. It's Dragapult. No ifs, no buts, no maybes, no mucking about. It is Dragapult by a mile. Dragapult is absolutely redonkulous. Firstly, you've got Dracloak. Let's look at the top two cards of your deck. Put one in your hand and one to the bottom of your deck. It's a stage 2, but now we've got a stage 1 adding consistency, which is brilliant. And then you've also got Dragapult itself. 2 energy, good. 260 to the active, good. 6 damage counters to the bench, good. Everything about this is awesome. It is one of those cards, it is going to make a gigantic difference. The only question is, which build are we playing? Because there is a real question here. Like, in terms of the best deck from the set, nah, mate, there's no question. It's Dragapult. Which build are we playing? Now, that is a fun one. And we don't have a perfect answer. There's several options. You can play it with the Xatu, which accelerates energy. And then you've got extra psychic energy, but remember it also draws cards when it accelerates energy. So you've got that combination of accelerating energy and drawing extra cards, which is a good thing. That'll work quite nicely. Or you can play it with Pidgeot, for instance, which is awesome for just letting you search any card you like, very much like the Charizard deck. Or you can play it with Charizard, so you're accelerating fire energy, giving yourself an extra attacker, etc. Or you can play a Lost Zone build with Comfey and that whole Lost Zone engine. There are different ways to play it. The presumptive best way initially seems to be Xatu. And we are too early, frankly. But the presumptive best way to play it seems to be Xatu. Watch this space for how good it actually ends up being, and whether there is a better option coming on later down the line. But right now, this seems to be the best way to play it. Now, there are some decks that get a little bit better with this set that aren't necessarily new decks. That's not really what we're worried about in this video. So I can tell you that the new Legacy Energy card is going to make Lugia better, because it's any energy, but it also then means you give up one less prize when KO'd. So it's a card that can really help to swing the prize race quite nicely. Lugia gets better with Legacy Energy and did win the first big Champions League in Japan with what is essentially Twilight Masquerade legal, but it's not a new deck. It's an old deck with a new trick. Similarly, Gardevoir gets a big boost from Munkidori. Munkidori, of course, lets you, if you've got Darkness Energy attached, move free damage from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponents. And of course, the whole point with Gardevoir is you are self-damaging to accelerate energy. So being able to heal a little bit while also moving energy over with Munkidori, clearly a very good thing. But again, we're not talking about some great new deck here. We are talking about an existing deck that gets a nice little new trick. It's not amazing, it's not game-breaking, but it is a nice little new trick. But there are some other actual new decks which are going to be pretty gosh darn good, one of which is Ogerpon. Now, some of you are going to quibble with this one, and I cannot blame you, because actually, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, it's not necessarily Ogerpon, it's more like Sandy Shock's Raging Bolt, which has been a deck for a while at this stage, with Ogerpon slipped in. That is a fair point to make. But I think the deck is getting so much better here, and it's made so much of a difference, that I'm actually willing to let it slide. because I think it is that much better than it used to be. Now, obviously here you've got Ogerpon, lets you attach an energy, and oh look, you've attached an energy. Would you like to draw a card? Yes, I would. That would be lovely. Thank you. So you've got extra consistency in that regard, and that's wonderful. But then, of course, you've got extra energy on the board. And once you've got extra energy on the board, that's where Raging Bolt comes in so beautifully. Because, of course, Raging Bolt lets you discard as much energy on your board as you like, and deal 70 for each energy that has been discarded. So now you've got Sandy Shocks, which is accelerating energy like it has been all along. But now we're adding in Ogerpon as well. And, like, the basic, boring scenario here is, oh no, I've only got one Sandy Shocks, and one Ogerpon, and one attachment for turn. I'm only doing a guaranteed 210 per turn. I know it's not actually guaranteed. You need grass energy in your hand for Ogerpon, fighting energy in the discard for Sandy Shocks, and energy in your hand to attach. Okay, fine, alright? But the point is, that's the kind of base point. That's your starting point. And then from there, you can start building in other stuff. You can start building in a second Sandy Shocks or a second Ogerpon, but actually Ogerpon is better than Sandy Shocks. And the reason Ogerpon is better than Sandy Shocks is because you're drawing extra cards while you accelerate the energy. It's not just getting energy on the field, although that is good. It's also drawing extra cards while you do so. That is the other thing that makes this so much better. Now, I'm hearing rumblings. Now, this has been fine so far. It's done all right in City Leagues. It did all right in the Champions League. And let's just put it this way. I've heard rumblings from more than one place that this is a deck which has not yet lived up to its potential, which is about to get a lot better. If you judge this deck only by what it's done up to now, you are going to look at this and be like, "Wassy, mate, this isn't that great." And that is absolutely a fair point. I've seen and heard enough to suggest it has not made enough of its potential up to now, and this is a deck that not enough people are taking seriously enough. Look to Japan Championships in a couple of weeks. I'm predicting this is going to end up being a much bigger deal. The other deck, which has kind of come out of nowhere and ended up being a pretty good deal, is basically Greninja, Pidgeot, Frostlass. All of those kind of mashed together into one deck. And it's not necessarily the most obvious combo you'd ever think of, but a lot of people have been thinking about it. It's honestly been doing really well. Now, Frostlass is a card, of course, that we have had quite a lot of discussion about on this channel, and has been discussed in a bunch of places. And basically, that's a one whereby you put one damage counter on each Pokemon with an ability during Pokemon Checkup, other than, of course, Frostlass. And this reminds me, if you go way back in time to the Empoleon days, you add in Greninja EX. Because what you've basically got is a card that punishes abilities and a fairly okay, no-frills Pokemon without an ability. And if you were playing in the kind of late 2000s, you'll get the Empoleon reference. I'm hoping you agree with me. Because Greninja, basically what we got here is single energy, 170, search for any card and put it into your hand. As soon as you start attacking with Greninja, it's great. Now, you're not really one-hit KOing anything, but you are hitting a decent weakness, so when you're hitting for the weakness, you'll be fine. But you're searching a card every single turn. And that means all of a sudden cards like Unfair Stamp, for instance, that you really need to get at the perfect time after your opponent's taken a KO, becomes way better. Or maybe instead you want to go for Scoop Up Cyclone. But again, you're going to have it at the perfect time, and because Greninja searches out any card, your opponent will not know which card you search for with Greninja. As a side note, they are the two A-specs that are seeing the most play in Greninja decks right now. That is not a coincidence. And then Pidgeot, of course, is just an engine which lets you search for whatever you want. Yes, it will take damage from Frostlass, but again, maybe that's where your Scoop Up Cyclone comes in, or maybe you just build a bit of healing into your deck, so you're built to get around the Frostlass, but your opponent isn't. And you're doing decent damage, searching for anything you want, and then using Frostlass to get extra damage down on the board. Also, as a side note, one thing I have to mention with this deck, TM Devolution becomes kind of hilarious at times, because of course the Frostlass damage will build up between turns, after your turn, after your opponent's, etc. And then if you find a point where you can start devolving with TM Devolution, you can take some cheeky prizes here, and of course, literally just play it as a one-of, as some City League winners have done, because it doesn't matter, because you're gonna have it when you need it, because you've got Greninja. Love this one. Now, that is, in terms of kind of Greninja and Ogerpon, they are the second tier right now, so to speak, of best new decks. But of course, like I've said, I expect Ogerpon to start getting better in the future. There are a couple of other decks that do bear talking about, but they are significantly lower down the list than even Greninja and Ogerpon, and of course they're significantly down the list from Dragapult. And one of them is Blissey with Munkidori. I love this deck so much. I did a whole video about it just the other day telling you how much I love it. And the theory here is very simple. Blissey comes along with a colourless attack, 180, draw till you got 6 cards in your hand. Not unlike Greninja, in that you're not getting big one-hit KOs, but you are getting extra consistency by virtue of using the attack, because you've got draw coming in here as well. But you've got 300 HP on a stage 1 Pokemon, and I've already mentioned Munkidori being able to move damage counters, but it's actually better in Blissey because of the ability Happy Switch. Lets you move a basic energy from one of your Pokemon to another. So if I've got 2 Munkidori on the bench, I have a Darkness Energy on one, use the ability, use Blissey's ability to move to a second Munkidori, and then all of a sudden I'm using 2 abilities from one energy. Yeah, this is one that I'm a big fan of. This is obviously going to be a deck that uses Hero's Cape to try and avoid getting KO'd. That should be fairly obvious. Most decks are going to go for that. It's not all of them. There are some exceptions, but Hero's Cape is clearly the go-to for this particular deck, and I love it. Beef, don't get KO'd, go for it. And my favourite new deck from Twilight Masquerade is not the best new deck from Twilight Masquerade, but I've got to mention it here because I absolutely love it. It is Thwackey Dipplin. Yeah, that's right. Thwackey and Dipplin. And I adore this card, and I hope you all got Thwackey in your pre-release kits. You see, what we've got here is Dipplin, whereby if you've got Festival Grounds or Stadium in play, you get to attack twice. Now, there's other Pokemon that can attack twice, but Dipplin's the only one with a decent damaging attack. It does 20 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So, make sure you've got 5 bench Pokemon. Deal 100 damage. Job's a good 'un. And then they have to put up a new Pokemon if you take a KO. Against decks playing smaller Pokemon or support Pokemon, setup decks, etc., etc., you can often take 2 prizes with this, or even just do 200 damage for a single energy on a stage 1 Pokemon, which is kind of awesome. And then, of course, you bring in Thwackey, that just says, once during your turn, if your active Pokemon has the Festival Lead ability, search for any card. Yeah. That's kind of busted. You may also notice there is some text missing from Thwackey that you might be expecting. It doesn't say you cannot use more than one Boom Boom Groove ability during your turn. Yep. So, yeah, that's kind of broken. I love this deck. And actually, I suppose I should mention Iron Thorns is actually a thing as well. Now, this is a proper fringe deck at the moment. Can't say it's gonna get better. Can't say it's not. But it's not one I've got a huge amount of faith in right now. But just having Iron Thorns sitting in the active, turning off abilities of non-future Pokemon, this is one that has seen a little bit of play and a little bit of love. It's been outperformed by Thwackey Dipplin, which seems to be more of a fun, semi-viable gimmick deck than a real powerhouse in the meta. But it's there, and I thought I should mention it anyway. Like I've said, there is a clear winner when it comes to best new decks. It's Dragapult. After that, you've really got Greninja and Ogerpon. And then you've got things like Blissey, Dipplin, and Iron Thorns kind of bringing up the rear, so to speak. And now that we've had an entire season of, well, not season, but, session, however you want to phrase it, of City Leagues and the Champions League, we can now kind of step back a bit and take a look at the results in Japan and see what the best decks are. These are the best new decks. Or maybe I've missed one. Maybe I've been silly. Maybe there's one that hasn't really cleaned up in Japan yet, but you think it is about to start popping off. Or maybe you just agree with my list. Either way, let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at Thwackey. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.